Do you remember what you meant when you were saying that people may have been underestimating Joe Biden?
Yeah. Well, there was this narrative that said that Joe Biden was going to inevitably collapse shortly after he was running for president because they said that he was too touchy-feely with like women or something. Remember that?
Yep.
Because he had these old statements and votes on racial issues that people were going to find appalling and they were going to abandon him. You could name the sort of failed criticisms that have been leveled at Biden for now, 9 months, if not more? And so I was saying, in pointing to his resiliency, I was saying it's not going to be any of these relatively minor criticisms that are ever going to take Joe Biden down. If he's going to be taken down, it's going to be of his own doing because he has to demonstrate that he has the cognitive capacities now to mount a vigorous presidential campaign. And even though the campaign has been very poor, even though his performance has been subpar, to put it mildly, in the debates, at his events, even when I talked to him in New Hampshire a couple months ago, he concocted a brand new story about when he supposedly started opposing the Iraq War. He said he opposed it before it began to me, and which is a total lie.
Right.
I mean, so he just has not performed well, and yet he's still relatively strong in the polls. I'm not saying he's going to win the nomination. I'm not saying that he's necessarily performing in a way that maximally leverages the advantages that he has.
But he's not totally collapsed.
But he hasn't collapsed.
Okay.
I mean, people were saying that Kamala Harris was the front runner because she was going to take the black vote away from Joe Biden. First of all, the black vote is not a monolith. Joe Biden does a lot better among Southern blacks than he does Midwestern or Western blacks. So even referring to the black vote is kind of condescending because you just pretend that every black voter has the same interest, which is just wrong and insulting. But I think that people were just underestimating the extent to which a lot of voters do still really like Barack Obama. It's funny, when people talk about Biden, the reasons for his resiliency are almost too obvious to discuss. It's almost like not even worth mentioning, so people just kind of gloss over it. Just that he was the vice president for 8 years, a president who was still extremely popular among Democrats, and therefore that's an extraordinarily powerful platform from which to wage a primary campaign. So, I mean, it's not that complicated. I was just saying that people because a lot of people in the media do not like Joe Biden, or at least let's say the online progressive-oriented media, very much hostile to Joe Biden. You don't see a really robust online support base for Joe Biden.
Right.
So the people who exist in that world were trying to come up with all these explanations for why Joe Biden was going to falter or he would never make it. He was going to drop out before Iowa. I remember a lot of people saying, that hasn't come to fruition. I don't know how he's going to place in Iowa, but he's within the margin of error of victory.
Sure.
So maybe some of that analysis was not totally correct. I mean, I think even if I don't like Joe Biden and I wouldn't want him to be the nominee, I have to separate that analytically from looking at what his political strengths are and why he has the appeal that he does in the electorate. It's important to sort of maintain two modes of sort of analytical approach when you're talking about U.S. politics, because a lot of people can't separate their own personal preferences from their analysis of what's going on, and that sort of creates a muddled picture of what is affecting our political life. And so I always strive to sort of at least do my best to separate out my own personal preferences from a more dispassionate and at least an attempt at impartiality in just trying to coldly assess why a person like Biden would be more formidable than a lot of people in the media who don't like him wanted to admit.